friends, and welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Kallie Branciforte. I'm super pumped that you're here, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video and, maybe consider subscribing. I mean, listen, don't subscribe right just yet. I mean, we just met. We don't even know each other, but like a little later in the video if you enjoyed what you're seeing. Today we are in my kitchen. Now, the kitchen is one of the rooms that when we bought this house last August, we knew we were going to eventually need to remodel. It's a totally functional kitchen, but it could just be done a lot better. The layout isn't that great. The cupboards, I'm pretty sure, are original to the house. The house was built in 1930s, so, it has some organizational challenges, and because of that, this room becomes the dumping ground of our house. Especially during quarantine, it has just become where everything ends up and it has become a complete cluttered mess. And so since we're not going to be remodeling this kitchen anytime in the super near future, I want to tackle some of the organizational issues in this kitchen to make it a lot more functional and to reduce the clutter and make it not be the dumping ground anymore. And while I am mildly embarrassed to show you some of the just like utter chaos and clutter that has happened in this kitchen through the last 10 weeks of quarantine, I feel like we're friends here, so I feel like I can share it, and I want to bring you along with me as I organized this kitchen and I tackled the big organizational issues, so let's do this. Okay, before we jump right into organizing, the first thing that I did was step back and identify what my organizational and storage issues were in this kitchen. I feel like sometimes when we get amped up to organize the space, we just start like buying storage bins and cute baskets and we don't really have a plan of how we're going to organize. I find that I get way better organization solutions that really stick and last if I start with a plan. So the first thing I did was identify the challenges of this space. Now the first one is the cupboards. Like I said, pretty sure they're original to this house, 1930s. And the thing about 1930s cupboards is they weren't built for a kitchen living in 2020. They are very big and bulky and they have a lot of unused vertical space that makes it kind of hard to store in them. Which brings me to my second organizational challenge, which is this kitchen does have quite a bit of space for storage, but a lot of it is up high out of arm's reach, which means that it often doesn't get properly utilized. The third issue that I've always had in this kitchen is that no matter what type of organizational strategy I've tried, they always seem to fall apart after a couple of weeks and everything ends up unorganized again. And the last challenge of this kitchen is that it's definitely the hub of our house. It's kind of where you first come in when you walk in the back door, which is where we always enter. We don't have any downstairs closets, so another reason that it really just ends up a dumping ground. So I need to have storage for the kitchen in here, but I also need to have some other storage options available for other types of things beyond just the kitchen, because this really is the hub of the house. Okay, so we're going to start with this cabinet. And yes, this is very embarrassing how disorganized I've gotten. It's like, when something is unorganized and then you're just like unmotivated to keep it any more organized and you just keep shoving stuff in there. That's how we got to where we are, guys. Okay, so I'm gonna pull everything out of these cabinets, and then the first thing I did was I decided I wanted to paint these cabinets. So like I said, they're pretty old and they were in really bad shape, and I almost didn't realize how bad they looked until I had started taking everything out. So I decided it would be worth my time to give everything a fresh coat of paint, and I painted all of the hardware black and just gave it a new fresh look. So they're still 1930s cabinets, but they just feel a little bit fresher and new. Okay, but moving on to organizing, the problem we're addressing here is the awkward height and the unused vertical space that we have here. So I have a couple of ways that I'm going to maximize this space. The first thing I'm doing is on the bottom shelf, I'm adding a shelf riser. These are really great because they basically just add an extra shelf where you don't already have one. I also bought these under the cupboard baskets, which are really smart. Just for basically making more use of space. And it took me a little bit of tweaking to get it just how I wanted, but after some fussing, it allowed me to get all of my mugs and Tupperware neatly organized on this first shelf. Moving upward, the next two shelves also have a lot of vertical space that's hard to use, so I ended up getting a couple of these clear Tupperware bins, and these actually have the tops built into them, which I actually really like because I find like sometimes with these types of Tupperwares I end up losing the lids. They get misplaced or whatever, and this way it just stays contained and all together. And one thing I did is I made sure I measured my cupboard before I ordered these so that I could get the largest size available but not get something too big. Like I said, sometimes you just start buying Tupperwares or baskets without really thinking, but I really wanted to optimize the space as much as possible. So having these bins allows me to stack 2 things high. So I'm putting my more used items like our Nespresso pods and our vitamins at the top, and then less used items at the bottom. And one of the best things about organizing and starting to organize smartly is you realize you actually usually have way more space than you think you do. I actually realized I have extra space. This cabinet now has actually 2 full empty Tupperwares that I can use to fill with other sorts of things, so it just gives me more available space. Okay, and while we're on the topic of sort of like hard to reach spaces or things that are like awkwardly high, one of the issues in this kitchen is that a lot of the storage space is up kind of high, above a cabinet or up above the fridge, and it made it really hard to reach it, which means things just got thrown up there and they got disorganized really easily, or it made it really hard to find what you were looking for. And then I kind of had a dumb moment and I was like, I should probably get a footstool. So I got this one right here and he fits right into the corner of the kitchen, and now it's super easy to access all of those sort of high up spots, where before I was like just throwing stuff up there because I couldn't reach it, and then God knows what was up there. Now that I have my footstool, I've decided to tackle those 2 places and make them way more functional. So the first one is above this armoire. So I got a set of these big canvas bags from Amazon. I actually use a set of these underneath our kitchen island. They're super great for storing of larger things. So above the armoire, I had this one really big one, and I decided to use this to store all of the stuff for our dog. This way, all of the dog stuff was all in one space. It's usually not something I need every single day, but if I do, it's right at arm's reach. Like I said, we don't have any closets down here, so I have to be smart about how I store stuff. And then above our fridge, I store like our big platters and our serving bowls up there. But then it also sort of tends to collect clutter for just like any random projects we're working on, whether we're doing some home improvement around the house or I'm working on a DIY, that stuff just kind of ends up there. So I ended up putting one of those canvas totes up on top of the fridge so that it could collect all of those like little pieces and little things that we were using for a DIY, whether it was like some tools that we had out because we were working on painting the kitchen cabinets or whatever. And it's honestly really helped to minimize the clutter in this space, because now it's there when I need it, but it's out of sight, out of mind. Oh hey, remember at the beginning of the video when I said that if you were new and you liked this video that maybe you would consider subscribing? Right now might be a good time. Saying. Okay, we're moving on to my pantry by taking everything out. And it's not actually a pantry. Like I said, this downstairs of this house doesn't have any closets. So the previous owners had installed a bunch of like IKEA cupboards, which aren't like my ideal preference, but they work fine for storage, and it's what we use as our pantry. The biggest issue with these cupboards is I spend a lot of time organizing them, and then for some reason within a week or 2, the organization that I've done has been gone. So as I'm putting things back, I really want to think about how I can organize it in a way that will stick. But even though I organize something in a way that feels really smart, it's really easy for like me to forget my organizational structure. Like I might say, okay, the cans go here, but then in a month or 2, I can't remember exactly how I wanted everything to be. Not to mention I'm not the only person who lives in this house, and my husband cannot read my mind and know exactly how I want to organize things. So one thing I am doing as I organize this pantry is I'm labeling things, like specific areas, so I know what areas of the pantry are supposed to be for what things. And I know this might seem a little bit extra, but let me tell you, it really works to help me stick to my organizational structure so that I don't forget, so my husband knows where things go. And as I'm cleaning my pantry, I'm also taking the time to clean out things that aren't good anymore, obviously to fill up space. I don't know about you guys, but for some reason, whenever I have spices, it's like you buy spice for one meal, and then somehow it's 2 years later and you realize you never use that spice again. My spices, I'm organizing them all into one caddy, so it's really easy to pull them out and get what I need. And I'm labeling. I'm adding new labels to the top of each of these spices. Because I store these in small bins, it's just way easier for me to have the tops labeled, so that way when I pull the bin out, I can just look down and see what the spices are without having to pull each bottle up. And then I'm just putting everything back into the pantry in a way that makes sense and is organized, and then labeling it so then in a week or 2, and I go to put something away, I know where it belongs. Okay, we're gonna move on to the fridge, and I actually wanna use a semi-similar organizational structure to the pantry. I'm actually gonna label certain areas for certain things, but before I do that, I'm actually going to replace the contact paper that I have on there. This is a little kitchen hack that I use where I place contact paper strips on the glass shelves of my fridge. It keeps them looking really fresh and clean, and then when they get really grimy or scuffed up, usually every 6 to 12 months, I just replace them, and it honestly keeps the fridge looking so much cleaner and newer and fresher. But then moving on to organizing, of course, I'm double checking for any expired condiments, and then I'm labeling the areas of my fridge. Again, I know that labeling a fridge seems super extra, but you have to believe me, this totally works. We've been using it for probably about 2 weeks now, and it's kept my fridge so organized. Even my husband is on board with it. The other day, he called me from the kitchen and he was like, is jam a spread or a sauce? Like, he was very into making sure he was putting it back in the right place. And it's just super nice to know where things are going, but even better yet, when you're looking for something in the fridge, you know exactly where it is because you've labeled the spot for it. We've got our fridge nice and organized, and the structure has been working really well for us to help us keep it more organized. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to organize is this sort of black cupboard. It's sort of in like the entryway between our kitchen and our back door. But the problem is that this has just become like a kitchen overflow disaster. Like, anything that didn't fit somewhere else just ends up in there. And I need this to be a much more functional space. And what I really want to do with this space is sort of create like a mini mudroom, if you will, because one of the biggest issues is because the back door is right here and we walk into the kitchen, what always ends up in my kitchen is like jackets and like my toddler's shoes and like the diaper bag and whatever. It becomes the dumping ground for whatever happened to come through the door. So I want to create a little mini mudroom in here. Also, I want to start using it to sort of empower my son Miles to start to like be able to put his own jacket away and put his own shoes away, because we used to hang them up higher where he couldn't reach them. But now he's at an age when he comes to the door, he can start like putting his own stuff away. So first I'm going to tackle the left side. It's just like a mess of kitchen stuff. I'm just going to get more organized. And just a little side note that sometimes the easiest and best organizational trick is just changing the shelf heights in your cupboards or your closets. Sometimes we just use them the way that they are because we never think to change them, but almost always they are adjustable. And sometimes by just adjusting them a little bit, you can get a setup that works way better for you. Okay, so moving on to the other side, I'm going to transfer this into Miles's little mudroom. So first I rearranged the shelves to create two small thin ones on top for shoes and little outdoor stuff, and then that leaves the bottom section wide open. So I can make this a place to hang jackets. Like I said, sometimes just adjusting the heights of different shelves can make it a way more functional space for you. I'm going to use some command hooks and stick these to the back of the cupboard to hang jackets and hats and the diaper bag and all sorts of other stuff, and I'm so happy with how this turned out. It is literally exactly what we needed for this space. It was definitely an out-of-the-box way to use like what was considered more of like a buffet or a cupboard, but it worked so well for us. And like I said, I had to sort of like think about like, okay, what are the organizational and like clutter challenges of the space? And it was just a really easy solution for that. And it's been working so well. My son loves to put his jacket away. He loves to put his shoes away. He knows to go over there and get his shoes and jacket when it's time to go outside. So it's been a big organizational win for us. Good job. All right, my friends, well, that does it for this video. Thanks for coming along with me while I tackled the huge mess that was my kitchen. Like, oh my God, it had gotten so disorganized. But I'm really glad that I took the time to do it right, to sort of think about like, okay, what are the challenges here and how can I solve those challenges with some simple solutions? I hope that this maybe inspired you to tackle some tricky to organize places in your house. Maybe you have a kitchen that's also a dumping ground. Please tell me that somebody else does and it's not just me. Anyways, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. As always, I hope you guys are having a super fantastic day, and I will see you all in my next video.